Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Net zero and our progress towards it might have left the front pages, but for many businesses, it's still having an enormous impact on the way they operate and the way they plan for the future. So, are we in line to achieve our targets? And what about the broader push towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, things like affordable and clean energy and reduced inequality, which are supposed to be achieved by 2030. The UN Global Compact Network Australia is the Australian chapter of a global initiative that encourages businesses to adopt sustainable and socially responsible policies. We wanted to check in today and see what progress we're making and what achieving these goals will mean for Australian businesses and the economy. Kate Dundas is the Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network Australia. Kate, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Hello, Sean. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Kate, just explain the role of your organisation, and you've got the UN part in the title, so how you are connected to the UN.
Yes, we are the way in which the United Nations talks to the private sector. So we're the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. There's around 170 countries involved in the UN Global Compact Network, and I lead the Australian chapter of the network. So the UN Global Compact Network Australia, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but we call ourselves the UN GCNA.
Okay, and what are you trying to achieve? Is it that communication flow between business and the UN?
That's one thing, but our reason for being is to align businesses' operations and strategies with the UN Global Compact's 10 principles. And they cover environment and climate change, anti-bribery and corruption, labour, and business and human rights. And they all map to the Sustainable Development Goals. So when businesses sign up to the Global Compact, they agree to shape their businesses to achieve sustainable development.
Okay, so the Sustainable Development Goals are a big undertaking. There's no doubt about it. So let's break it down a bit and let's talk climate first, because we often do. We're building up to a federal election. Climate change, is it going to be a policy battleground like it has been in previous years? And where are we at now with progress towards our targets and ultimately net zero?
Will it be a battleground? Well, I mean, if we look to the past, it's always been a battleground in Australia. Yeah. And the emerging discussions on nuclear seem to suggest that it will continue to be a battleground as we head into the next election. What we really want businesses to do is focus on the long term and focus on the opportunities that come with embedding the SDGs into business strategy and operations. And look, if we look globally, there's so much opportunity for Australia to lead the discussion when it comes to clean energy and reaching net zero. If we don't get distracted by the political meandering, we just need to keep our eye on the game.
Okay, so where are we in our progress towards net zero?
We're making some progress. If we look at the SDGs overall, we're making terrible progress. There's only about 15% of the Sustainable Development Goals on track for 2030. And Australia, when we look at climate, isn't doing very well at all. The reliance on fossil fuels and the fossil fuel export sector in Australia has made us one of the wealthiest countries globally. And there's huge opportunities to align with global best practice when it comes to transforming our energy system and really thinking about how we protect biodiversity, natural habitats, harness the power of the wind, waves and sun. And we're seeing huge progress towards that in Australia. But overall, globally, tracking against the SDGs is not looking good.
Okay, so in terms of, I'm just trying to think about the debate in Australia. We talk about needing gas as a transition fuel. No one's arguing the need for coal, and the shelf life of coal stations is at an end in any case, so no one's going to put much more money into it, even though they will delay their closure, I suppose, in some cases. Well, how does gas fit into these Sustainable Development Goals, particularly around climate change? Is it okay?
I mean, gas
that's a silly question.
Gas is not mentioned when you talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Gas is a fossil fuel, obviously. We're trying to transition away from fossil fuels. There's many discussions around how much gas we need for the transition. But what we really want to do is focus on the long term. We need to transition away from gas as quickly as we can. We need to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels as quickly as we can. And that's where the opportunity lies for Australian businesses.
Stay with me, Kate. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Kate Dundas from the UN Global Compact Network Australia. Okay, so let's move away from carbon. What about some of the other sustainability development goals? Anti-slavery, for example, I'm not even sure what the words are, Kate, but you know what I mean. Some of the other key ones that we should be following.
Yes. So when we focus on anti-bribery and corruption and environment and climate change and business and human rights and labour. So we're making progress when it comes to business and human rights. We've had legislation over the past couple of years focusing on modern slavery. So businesses now are reporting against modern slavery, which is a very useful measure of making sure we've got transparency in businesses' supply chains and making sure businesses are making the right decisions when it comes to their own workers and the services that they're procuring for their goods and services. So we're certainly making some great progress when it comes to modern slavery. ESG pressure is coming really from every direction, and consideration of ESG risk. Do you know what ESG stands for?
Yep.
Environmental, social governance.
Yep.
Yes. So businesses are, balancing these three elements when it comes to decisions as investors decide which companies to invest in. And they really want their companies to do well on issues like climate, human rights, and nature protection. And the other thing that we're seeing coming up is really a new generation of socially conscious employees who are looking for values-aligned businesses. And when we talk to our young professionals that are just entering the market, they're really choosing which businesses to work for based on their ethical considerations and what they're doing when it comes to ESG, climate, modern slavery, ethics, and good governance. And some research that we've recently done is that businesses that actually invest in positive change tend to perform better. So the League of Scholars undertook a research project that revealed that our members, UN GCNA participant companies, experience a 5% annual premium in returns compared to non-members. And I think that probably reflects that when you embed good governance, good social and environmental practices within your business, you actually have a much more resilient business ongoing. So, and that is reflected in shareholder returns.
Okay, you mentioned labour. Is that in terms of the employees, what employees want? But how does labour fit into it? That was one of the terms you used into the 4 key priority areas.
Yeah, so it's in terms of labour rights. We align with the International Labour Organization. And in Australia, that plays out through unions. So the rights for the ability for workers to join a union and to have labour rights.
Okay, broadly, are we heading in the right direction? Well, I'm hoping you'll say yes to that, but are we heading quickly enough?
We're not heading quickly enough, no. Getting back to the Sustainable Development Goals, which we like to refer to as the universal call to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Big lofty goals. We're not making quick progress on them. We've achieved 15% progress, and we're supposed to have achieved the SDGs by 2030. It's highly unlikely that we're going to achieve them by 2030. So we really need transformational change over the next, what are we in now, 2024? We've got 6 years to, pull our socks up and get on with it.
What is transformational change? What's it take to get that?
It is a wonderful question. When we think about businesses, depends on the business. So transformational change would look like zero emissions, zero waste, so full circularity, protection and rehabilitation of biodiversity, business and human rights, so respecting human rights and making sure that if there has been harm, that there is no more harm anymore, and ending fossil fuels.
And that takes government, presumably, along with business?
It takes everybody. It takes government, it takes businesses, It takes us and our own particular habits and behaviours as consumers. We spend money every day. It really relies on our own personal choices as well. But government are there to set the legislation and lead, and the legislation sets the baseline that then businesses operate within the framework. And then businesses have the opportunity to go above and beyond and think more transformationally. What does the future look like? Will the business still exist in 10 years if we continue to do business as usual? One of the biggest opportunities for business is to think differently and to not think about business as usual, but to think about transformational change and opportunity that comes with that.
Kate, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much.
That was Kate Dundas, Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network Australia. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, a daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.